say who you are. That would be really good so everyone knows who you are. And be good to share all those details. So that's really nice. Okay. So I'm going to give it just about 30 seconds, maybe one more minute, and then I'll make the formal start. I always vow to get sort of pre-event music sorted out, but I don't think my musical tastes would ever really align to this sort of event. But maybe next time. Okay, so I think we are about 3 minutes past 11, and I'm going to make a start. So, like I said, right at the start, I'm Joshua Ryan-Saha. I'm the Director of Traveltech for Scotland, and I'll explain everything about Traveltech for Scotland in a second. Just as we're getting going, just to make you aware, we're going to be recording this event today, so that we can share it with all the people who couldn't make it but who really wanted to come. Please do introduce yourself into the chat function, just so that everyone knows who else is in the audience. Traveltech for Scotland is trying to be a bit of a community, so that's always really nice. There will be opportunity throughout the event to do question and answers in the chat, and I'll go through what the agenda is going to look like in a minute. So first of all, Traveltech for Scotland is the cluster organisation for travel technology organisations in Scotland. So what we mean by that is that it's a community of all travel. And the way that we have defined Traveltech is where you've got technology interfacing with every different part of the tourism customer journey. So we're going for this pandemic to planning where you're going, to booking, to then experiencing it, and then sharing your experience as well. So that's how we think about travel technology. And what we try to do is basically make Scotland the best place in Europe to develop travel technology solutions. So trying to think about how new technology can interface. So, has led this project, Visualise the Future of Tech-Enabled Tourism in Scotland, right from the start. And then we'll introduce to the architects and the fantastic artists and illustrators that have been working on this project. And then afterwards, you're going to hear from a wonderful panel from the tourism industry, travel industry, who are going to respond. So throughout, please do keep on putting your questions in there. And after the panel, there'll be opportunity for us to pick up on those questions and answer them. So very, very Scotland's tourism strategy is to make Scotland a world leader in 21st century tourism. And this project is looking at 20 years in the future. A sustainable and responsible future for Scotland's tourism. But also, it's a really critical part in helping us recover from this particular pandemic. And we just want to explore creativity, technology, and innovation. And we think this could be a really exciting way to do it. So I'm not going to talk any more about that. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Anne, who, like I said, has led the project. Thank you very much for listening and enjoy the event.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Josh. I think Josh's audio was a little bit choppy there. I hope mine is slightly better. If not, just keep putting it in the chat and we'll try and find some solutions. Yeah, so thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm so excited about this project. I'm really excited to share it with you all. A quick thank you to everyone who has helped us so far, from the artists to the panelists, to everyone involved in the event and people from EFI that are helping, and also Josh and Leslie for their guidance and their help and giving me the freedom and responsibility with this project. So I'm going to walk you through the project a little bit, through the process that we've gone through, and describe it a little bit to you. I'll just introduce myself as well. I'm Anne Van der Poel. I'm the program assistant at Traveltech for Scotland. I interned with Edinburgh Futures Institute over the summer, and I've been working with Josh and Leslie on Traveltech for Scotland since. And so we've been working on this project since October. It's been a long time coming. It's really exciting to see it all finalized and all together here now. So visualize the future of tech-enabled tourism in 20 years in Scotland. Rolls off the tongue, really, I think. So kind of a little bit of background. So as you all inevitably know, the travel and tourism industry has had countless setbacks and challenges in the last year, and the industry has experienced inevitable adjustments and changes brought about by COVID-19, a lot of which will be permanent changes. And events from the last year have accelerated the need for tourism to adjust and put environmental and societal responsibility first, and to be sustainable in these ways. New types of travel have emerged and continue to emerge, and the pandemic has accelerated innovative new uses of technology. Considering all of this, the industry has been forced to reevaluate its approach to a variety of things. And so collectively, we're all wondering, how can we ensure a sustainable future for Scotland as a tourism destination? In the last year, when dealing with all the ongoing challenges, there's been little time and space to look ahead to a better future. And given what Traveltech for Scotland does on the larger scale, we wanted to come up with a project that would encourage looking ahead amongst industry and wider members. So we initially started thinking about a project involving visual stimulants or art, and we primarily wanted it to be creative and engaging. We spent a lot of time thinking about the connections between artistic inspiration and scientific brilliance. And also we're well aware of the challenges and setbacks felt by the creative industry and economy in Scotland. And so, driven by all of this, we wanted to harness creativity in order for the tourism and travel tech sector to imagine the industry beyond the current moment. So born from there is Visualize the Future. So through visual arts, we're inspiring the visualization of a better future, and these digital and visual mediums are allowing us to foster an exploration of how technology can help forge a thriving, sustainable approach to travel and tourism in Scotland in the long term. So in terms of our process, we put out a call on Creative Scotland and contacted some artists directly. We put out a brief asking the artists to respond to it with a project idea, information about themselves, and examples of their previous work. We received 12 really fantastic and extremely different applications, and we assessed these according to adherence to the brief, quality of ideas, previous portfolios. That was our top priority, and then alongside that, we also wanted the four that we were going to commission to really create a wide variety of ideas. Incidentally, I'll acknowledge it now, two of our artists are actually married to each other, which was not intentional, but that is how it's ended up. So we selected the artists, we spoke to each of them, and they've been working on their pieces for the last month. So the pieces are exploring themes and issues such as, in the next 20 years, what will tourism in Scotland look like, and how will technology enable this? What types of technology will exist in the next 20 years, and how will they enhance tourism? Considering the climate crisis and sustainable tourism needs, how will the future of travel be impacted? What does a better quality of tourism look like for providers, locals, and visitors alike? Most importantly, though, the artists are following their image of the future and the types of technology and travel within it. We didn't give any guidance beyond the brief, nor did we adjust anyone's ideas or visions after the applications. The only thing we really encouraged them to do was to follow their vision, and to also be as provocative and creative as they liked. The only requirement was for the artists to incorporate digital tools and technology into their pieces, which you will see has been done to a variety of degrees and in really exciting ways. I think the fact that each of the artists was given the brief but responded in such different ways according to the same information is really one of the most exciting and fascinating things about this project. And today, right now, we're unveiling these artworks for the first time. So each of the artists are going to talk through their ideas, their information, their process, and show us their artworks. And this is going to be followed by a panel event with 3 industry panelists and a chair. And the main motivation for the project is really that we wanted to generate a conversation around the ideas and issues that the artworks are bringing up. And the panel discussion is kind of a demonstration of these types of conversations. The panelists are the only people to have had exclusive pre-access to the pieces, and they are going to respond to the artworks and what they mean for the future of tourism and technology, and how these things interplay. So essentially the event has 2 sections. We'll hear from the artists, and then we'll move to the panelists. And just another reminder that throughout the event you can put questions into the chat, because there's a time at the end for a Q&A session for both the artists and the industry panelists. So I'm going to introduce our first artist, who's Kat O'Neill. Kat O'Neill is an award-winning freelance illustrator. Her work uses visual metaphor to communicate ideas and stories, and uses a combination of traditional and digital techniques. Kat regularly works with clients, including the New York Times, Washington Post, Scientific American, Wired, and more. And I'll now pass over to Kat.
Great, thanks for that introduction, Anne. So with the Traveltech brief, it was very interesting for me because most of my work is with newspapers and magazines, and it's quite a strict brief. So when I saw the possible job, it was really exciting to have the chance to make a personal response to something. I'm quite engaged with nature, and I live in Edinburgh, so being surrounded by a lot of different touristy things and being in the capital, I thought it would be a really interesting project to create an artistic response to. So with the Traveltech brief, it being the future of tourism and how technology interacts with that, as I said, I wanted to create a personal response to it. And thinking about how the pandemic has affected everyone, I noticed that a lot more people are going on walks and really appreciating nature a lot more. I mean, that's the only place we can go at the moment. So I thought that that would be a really nice thing to focus on in terms of environmental issues. I think people getting to engage more with nature makes you appreciate why it's so important. And I wanted to focus on that quite specifically with the piece I was making. Hopefully, if people can appreciate more about the environment, they can care more and hopefully do more to protect it in the future. So with tech and tourism, I thought that it would be nice to focus on a way that technology helps us engage with our surroundings rather than thinking about us being trapped in a screen. The use of technology can really help us appreciate what's around us. For example, I would find lots of different new routes and walking routes by looking on my phone and finding different apps that would show you not just maps, but interactive elements. So you'd go on a walk and find, oh, there's a thing there that I didn't know about, and you get a little pop-up notification telling you a little bit of the history there. So with the piece that I made, I'm going to start sharing my screen so I can talk you through the whole process of making it. So I always start off my projects with sketches. It's just a rough idea for me to see what's going on, and I can plan a piece out. So with this, I was just thinking about the general shape of the piece. I don't really need to draw anything too specifically because I've been working as an illustrator for 10 years. I know that I can draw a person if I want to. So with this piece, I wanted to work in a way that was in 3D. So there were different layers. And to do that, I need to sort of plan out which piece goes where. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and all of these layers, it requires a lot of planning. So I start off drawing everything on separate pieces of paper. It's all done in pencil at first, and I'm just sketching things out. And then I ink everything up. And that means I take brush pens, mapping nibs, And I use black Indian ink and sketch everything out using different methods of mark making, different ways of portraying nature. And all of these images are based on, they're actually drawn from photos of my own trips. So in that way, it is quite personal for me. I get to see lots of different trips that I went around Scotland and include that in the work. So then these are all together. Let's see if I can move this. Sorry. And then knowing that these are going to be done in 3D, I've planned little lines around the drawings just as a guide, so I know where to crop everything using scalpel blades. You can see like the little edges around here. And then I start cutting things out with the scalpel and take a lot of care to not cut my own fingers off, which is very difficult. It's almost like a rite of passage actually for art school students, is everyone gets 1 or 2 scalpel injuries at some point. So I cut all of those bits out. Takes quite a bit of time. Rub out the pencil lines on the edge. And then I've got all of the pieces together that I'm going to use to create the piece. Now, because it's in 3D, I need to sort of plan how everything is going to interact with each other, because they're going to be placed on different layers, different heights. So it's a fair amount of wiggling around, takes a bit of time, but then eventually I'll have figured out exactly how I want to create the whole composition. And that refers back to the earlier sketch that I did at the very beginning of the process. And what I wanted to show was have this couple using a bit of technology, using the iPad, but rather than just touching a screen and looking at it, they're actually using it and going through it almost like a portal into the world. So you have that real engagement between a piece of technology and the outside environment. So then making that 3D is quite a wiggly business. So I have lots of different props to hold things up, and I'm using like random little blocks that I've found, little boxes, cut up bits of rubber, anything really. And then sticking it all so it stays in place. And then I photograph it using a pretty high res camera, usually a DSLR. And then when I've got that photo, I can have it on my computer screen and it's a flat image like this. So this is where the process then becomes more digital. And what I really liked about this project and the way that I work is that it's the mixing technology and our day-to-day lives is really reflected in my working process. So I work very traditionally at the beginning, but then it all becomes digital. So I have this image there and then I can color it digitally. So then it ends up looking like this. So this is the final piece that I created for this Traveltech. And I just wanted to quickly show you as well a little process GIF of how the coloring happens too. So let me just switch to this. So you can see that I work using lots and lots of layers of color and slowly adding in texture and building it up. And then I color the line work and add in little digital elements as well, like the little map points. So both the original piece of artwork and the final digital piece is created in many, many layers. So it takes many hours to build up all of these different textures and colors all together. So it really does make the whole process of coloring in quite complicated. But by the end of it, what's really nice is that the final piece is a mixture of both a traditional and a very digital aesthetic. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now. So yeah, that's a quick explanation and introduction to the piece that I made, and hopefully that was interesting for you to see, get a bit of an insight into how an illustrator works. I think I can pass that back to Anne now.
Fantastic, Kat. Thank you so much. It's really, really beautiful. I think what really stuck with me was what you said about technology as a portal into the world, and you really visualized that as well. Really beautiful. Thank you. We're going to pass over to Jonny Harris next. Jonny Harris is a visual artist based in Forres, Moray. His creative practice blurs the lines between art and design, and also digital and analog, bringing together motion graphics, animation, and wood block printmaking to create often deeply textural multimedia work. As a lifelong environmentalist, Jonny's creativity is often inspired by the natural world. And when not in the studio, he can often be found with a map in hand and a flask of strong coffee, exploring the nearby beaches, mountains, and forests. Jonny, over to you.
Thanks very much, Anne. Yeah, just to be clear, I also drink strong coffee in the studio to keep me going. Yeah, delighted to be part of the project. I've really enjoyed the creative journey that the artwork has taken me on, and it's given me the opportunity to explore some creative techniques that I haven't used before. So first of all, I'm going to read out a 2-minute artist statement. Then you'll see a video of the completed artwork, which is about a minute. Then after that, I'm going to show you some photographs, which shows you the creative process. Quite a lot to cover in 7 minutes, so I'll just crack on. I thought I'd read this statement just because it's quite succinct. Otherwise, you'll all be here for about 45 minutes while I chatter away. So yeah, what connects you to this place is a multimedia artwork. The 360-degree visual story map integrates real-life photographic environments with motion graphics and woodblock printmaking techniques. The concept behind the work is to create a playful visual representation of how technology and augmented reality could shape our future experience of a place, taking map making as a starting point and adding layers of information that can be accessed site-specifically through our mobile devices. A key theme of the artwork is the idea of curation. If there are going to be layers of information and stories associated with a specific place, then who gets to choose these? How do we make them authentic and meaningful? Do we actually want to know everything about a place, or do the hidden unknown things create the magic? The aesthetic of the artwork also explores the idea of a real experience. The fragmented motion graphic elements are interweaved with analog woodblock prints as a visual metaphor. The handmade scratchings and carvings are unique, human and tactile, and the layers of information feel slick and glossy, and yet somehow detached from reality. If technology is to be used to enhance our experience of a place, then how is this done in a way that truly connects? As well as reflecting on the inner personal experience of a place, the artwork also touches upon a bigger, more outward looking ideas and issues such as ecological restoration and environmental sustainability, which are also issues really close to my heart. The 360-degree design of the digital artwork invites the viewer to explore the virtual space in their own way, going on a unique mini journey that is built by a series of choices. The text that appears throughout doesn't seek to answer questions, but to provide a space to ask them and to spark further debate. I forgot to mention earlier as well, just totally blown away by Kat's artwork, and I feel totally honoured to be kind of following her. So and yeah, it's just been a brilliant project to work on. So yeah, so I'm excited to share the art piece with you. So I'm just going to share my screen. And I hope you enjoy it.
Hi, Jonny. I'm not sure we can see the screen.
Can you not see the screen, really? Okay. I'll try another share. Sorry about that.
That's good.
Can you see that now? Sorry, everyone. So there we go. And yeah, here's just some stills of the creative process that I'll quickly chat through. So these were the initial concept designs that I used to sort of test out the idea at the start of the project, introducing some sort of textural elements in there. I selected the 360-degree photograph to be used in the artwork and started to build the 360-degree composition in the computer. I broke down the photograph into different layers. And here I quickly prototyped what it would feel like to start adding some geometric elements and also some contours. Here are the sketched out wood blocks that relate spatially to the photograph that you saw. I photographed the wood blocks as I carved them to create some stop frame animations that were integrated into the compositions. Added layers of paint to reverse the imagery. Here are some close-up shots of the finished wood blocks. Here's where things start to get really interesting, bringing all the different elements together into the computer. Creating deeply textural sort of compositions and bringing different mediums together. I then have played around with different ways that the elements interacted with one another. And here's a shot of me building the compositions in a 360-degree space. And you can start to see how things are kind of coming together in the final style now after lots of experiments and prototypes. And you can see it, yeah, really looking close to the finished thing here with also the fragments of shapes in there. And yeah, that's it. So just wanted to say a massive thanks to Traveltech for Scotland and Edinburgh Futures Institute. It's been an amazing project to work on. Total pleasure.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jonny. There's some really good responses in the chat as well. I think it's so fantastic to see what someone can do with technology when, you know, I can barely send an email on a good day, let alone make a 360-degree video. I think also you didn't mention this in your presentation, but when we first met, Jonny was talking about learning some new skills for this process, which I think also really spoke to the aims of our project in general. Yeah, so that's perfect. Thank you so much. So we'll move on to Elaine Ford now. Elaine Ford is an artist and biologist from Scotland who works to create installations using natural materials, VR immersive experience, and photography and film, which help us to connect with ourselves as a part of nature. Elaine is actually also a member of the Traveltech community with her business Electric Explorer, which is on a mission to tackle the climate crisis by incentivizing low carbon electric travel and ecotourism. So Elaine, over to you.
Hi Anne, thanks for the introduction. It's been fantastic to be a part of this project and being able to combine art, science and technology to visualize the future. So I'd love to introduce you to my co-creator for this project, which is the slime mold. So the slime mold is, or Physarum polycephalum, or the blob it could be called, is a protist, which means it's a single-celled organism and it has no central nervous system and no brain, but it is smart. By this I mean it's capable of learning, memory and problem solving. For example, navigating its way through a maze to find its food sources. And it absolutely loves Scottish oats, which I've actually gone through quite a lot of for this process. So it uses this like rhythmic pulsating movement, kind of oscillating through to sense and find food. But you can't see this with the naked eye, but you can see it through different photographic and film techniques. So I'm going to share my screen, show you a couple of time lapses just now. Okay. Okay, so you can see its exploratory behaviour, sensing its way to find food. And slime mold has been cited in many scientific studies to understand network modelling, collective behaviour, and engineering sensors. I set up experiments with Visarum polycephalum to explore the future of Traveltech in Scotland and how electric vehicle drivers can plan low carbon road trips between charging points in the most efficient way. Next slide. So I was inspired by how people were connected to places in the past. So I placed oats as the food resources at historic and Neolithic Scottish sites, as well as selecting electric vehicle supercharge points as a place to start the slime to allow to grow. The slime mold can help us to understand decentralized systems through self-organization, enabling it to solve problems. In this specific example, route optimization is one of the most challenging topics in computer science, and it's known as the traveling salesman problem. The slime mold addresses this problem by extending its fine exploratory sensors that fan out across the landscape as it searches for food. It forms this main vein connection, starts building a network between resource points. It can even keep track of where it's been. Here, Visarum has planned out several tourist routes from EV supercharge points across Scotland, visiting Scottish castles, nature, and ancient Neolithic sites from Edinburgh to Skye and Inverness, looping round to the east coast and back. The approach addresses how we can deliver an ambitious vision of net zero through low carbon EV travel by working with ancient organisms that have evolved network problem solving abilities over billions of years. Slime mold is also responsive to disruption, so perhaps really useful to learn from what roads to avoid due to traffic or if a charge point is broken down. Scientists at Swarm Labs at New Jersey Institute of Technology have also suggested slime mold behaviour can provide insight for designing decentralised systems, including a future of self-driving cars. So we can explore novel partnerships between human technologies like artificial intelligence and other forms of biological intelligence to address computational problems. Here I've looked at slime mold decision-making powers, working as an AI travel recommendation engine. So I've suggested 8 future tourism trends, including community ecosystem restoration, sea wilding, restorative gin trips, and activities that really help us to reconnect with nature and our past. The slime mold senses and makes decisions. Inspired by nature-based solutions to restore balance to our ecosystem, and likely a wilder adoption of looking to nature to help design the future, I co-created with Visarum polycephalum to create exploratory artwork. So I'll show you the video that we've created here. The audio you hear is the microphone recording from Mars, as captured by the Perseverance rover, which is an electric-powered vehicle exploring and rolling across the Jezero crater on Mars. So perhaps the future of Scottish tech-enabled tourism is planning electric journeys not only in our backyard, but elsewhere in the universe. So I could talk to you some more about slime, but I'll pass you back to Anne. And I'd love to say a big thanks to Simon Garnier, the director at Swarm Labs at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and Murray Collins, a space lead at the Edinburgh University.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Elaine. That was really fantastic. When Elaine first started talking about slime, afterwards I got off the meeting, I said to Josh, do you have any idea what this is? Because I have no idea. And the idea has worked out so fantastically. I think it was also one of the strengths was that it was so specific. And I love what you were saying about Slimo as a decision-making agent and how that connects to us and tourists in general as decision-making agents when we travel. Really fantastic. Thank you so much. So last but very much not least, I'm going to pass this on to James Albon. James Albon is a British author and illustrator. His editorial clients include the Folio Society, the Wall Street Journal, The Guardian, Liberation, Penguin Random House, and Wired. He studied illustration at Edinburgh College of Art and then went on to do a postgraduate scholarship at the Royal Drawing School in London. On top of all of this, he has also written and illustrated 3 graphic novels by the name of Her Bark and Bite in 2016, A Shining Beacon in 2018, and The Delicacy in 2021. So James, over to you.
Hi, thanks so much. And thanks once again for including me in this project. It's been really, really good fun to work on. I've lived in Scotland almost all my life and love living here and love traveling as well. It's really nice to enjoy the sort of what Scotland has to offer as a tourist, but also I love traveling abroad and sort of having that experience of going to a new place. All of these experiences have really brought a lot of influence onto the way that I approached this project, thinking both about how Scotland is for the citizens of Scotland and also for newcomers coming to explore it for the first time. It's very interesting thinking about the future of tourism. Often, a quick Google search or looking over headlines of various magazines, you see a lot of this idea of very flashy future technology like space travel, underwater hotels, flying cars, this sort of headline grabbing innovations, which, while I think in some ways they're interesting, I think that we'll find that really the future of tourism is in evolution, not revolution. I think when we look at Scotland, the things that appeal to any traveller to Scotland, whether they're local or from overseas, are things like Edinburgh Castle, Scotland's beautiful natural heritage, things that have been exciting for hundreds or thousands of years. And I don't think at all that in 20 years, people will have forgotten about Edinburgh Castle in favour of space hotels. In looking at the way that Scotland's tourism will develop then, I'm really interested in these sort of subtle ways that technology can help us access the elements of tourism that already exist. I'm just going to share my screen now. Look at the artwork. Okay. So this is an illustration that is in some ways traditional in the sense that it's painted in watercolor and gouache, these materials that have gone back, since the beginning of pictorial art, but also contains animated elements which are made with a sort of animated overlay in Photoshop. For these, I wanted to use the animated elements to show the ways in which sort of smart technology will be able to help us interact with existing tourism opportunities. We see this sort of diversity of Scotland's opportunities, both from elements like, the old town of Edinburgh and Victoria Street there, the Wallace Monument, Scotland's amazing hospitality industry, the beautiful like hotels and restaurants that we can enjoy, as well as the beauty of the Isle of Skye and the wonderful natural heritage that we have here. But I wanted to include these elements that hint at the way that we can use smart systems to sort of ease our access into these things. At present, tourism isn't always necessarily accessible to everyone, whether it's for health or disability reasons or for the challenges that people face, say, for example, with another language. I think the idea of a future where things like self-driving cars massively ease mobility and transportation for people, augmented reality translation can ease people's access into information and their navigation and logistics in approaching a new city, and also a future of sort of super fast trains, hopefully going somewhere to replace high carbon air travel, are all really, really exciting prospects. As this is somewhat, in some ways, less flashy than a future of sort of space travel, I'm also aware that in the audience today we have a lot of guests from the technology industry and people who are working with both technology and tourism, who I'm sure they're looking at this and going, oh, but we already have these technologies. And I think that's very true. I think that we've already, compared to tourism 20 years in the past, the things that we can do with a smartphone or with Google Maps are just incredible. And this is why, for me, the idea of the future of tourism really comes down to accessibility and sort of ease of design. I think that everyone who's gone on holiday overseas, for example, has had experiences which in theory should be easy with technology. For example, you arrive in a foreign airport and you think that, oh, you can just log on to the local Wi-Fi and you can immediately call a taxi or find a map. And you try to do this sort of thing that should be straightforward, and you suddenly find yourself, your phone's firewall blocks the connection, and then you have to log on and confirm something with your email address, and that doesn't work. And there are levels of frustration. I think that an interesting thing in the evolution of this technology is in fact not sort of flashy new systems, but like a development of UX design and a development of like the human approach to the way that technologies are used to help the people. I think all of this will help to build a sort of future of tourism in which we're all just almost have our tourist opportunities more handed to us, and we're able to just interact with them with even greater ease than we enjoy already. So I think, yeah, in that sense, the future of tourism of Scotland looks really exciting. I'm aware that we have a panel coming up now, so I'll keep it nice and brief. Hopefully, if you've got any questions later on, it would be great to hear from you. And I'll pass back to Anne just now.
Amazing. Thank you so much, James. What a wonderful way to finish our 4 artists. I think I really loved what you were saying about the lasting aspects of tourism, and really this idea of that you think it's going to be space travel, but in 20 years, of course, we're still looking at the same things in Edinburgh. And also how accessibility and inclusivity are really kind of like, that is the key to the 21st century almost, and how that'll feed into travel and tourism too.
Absolutely. It's funny, when I was developing my ideas, I almost felt like I was sort of doing myself down, because when I thought about the future, I thought, oh, I'll draw some rockets. That'll be really exciting. And the more I thought about it, Elon Musk might build hotels in space, but when we go to a hotel in space, we'll still want the same things that people have always wanted from hotels. We'll want like a comfortable bed and a good meal and a nice view out of the window. So Scotland can already offer all of that.
Yeah. Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to each of the artists for your work and for your presentations. You've all done a really fantastic job and have also been really fantastic to work with as well. So we will now move on to our panel discussion. Our panel is being chaired by Elaine Lamb, who is the Tourism and Creative Economy Manager for Scottish Enterprise. Elaine has worked in Scottish tourism for more than 25 years. Within Scotland's Economic Development Agency, Elaine's roles have included developing the agency's approach to destination development, informing Scottish Government policy on tourism management, and jointly creating the award-winning Tourism Destination Leaders Programme. Elaine is also the Scottish Enterprise sponsor for the Traveltech for Scotland tourism programme. So Elaine, I'll pass on to you, and Elaine will introduce each of the panelists and move into the panel discussion.
Fantastic, and thank you so much for your chairing and managing of the first half of the session. And yeah, I'm absolutely blown away. Just spending the last half hour listening to the artists talk about their process, sharing with us the thoughts behind their work. I think for me, what that really brought home was, having the artists interpret their work and their process was actually, for me, exactly the same type of experience that we hope that visitors who come to Scotland will have. So whether your interpretation is digital, whether it's something that you read in your hand, or whether it's a guide that's with you, the interpretation of your experience to help your experience really makes things so much more valuable. I think there's a couple of things just quickly before I introduce the panel that I picked up from the 4 artists. I loved Kat's idea of technology being a portal right into the centre of the natural environment. That was, you know, such an interesting idea, and resonated significantly, I'm sure, with so many of us who've enjoyed being in nature over the last year. Jonny's comment about making the magic, who's in charge of making the magic? We want magic to happen for every single person that experiences Scotland. So I think you hit the nail on the head with that comment. Elaine, I'm just kind of, yeah, I'm really gobsmacked by what you produced. But I suppose for me, the really interesting thing was how we could potentially use nature to look backwards and think about how nature can help us develop a more sustainable way forwards for the industry. So really, really interesting. And yeah, you used some Scottish produce with your slime, so that was good. Yeah, you're ticking all the boxes. And James, your evolution, not revolution. Yeah, and just because it's digital and it's technology, it doesn't need to be absolutely crazy, mad ideas. It can just be things that really help us do what we want every day. So that's more than enough for me. I have got a brilliant panel with me here today. I don't think the Traveltech for Scotland team could have found 3 more appropriate guests to have with us today. First of all, we have got Julie Grieve, who is the CEO and founder of Criton. Criton is one of Scotland's most exciting new travel tech companies, and Julie, I would certainly say, is one of our most exciting travel tech entrepreneurs. For me, Julie epitomises how to get to the root of the problem, because she absolutely understands the problems and the challenges that Scotland's tourism industry needs solved, and that's what her company are doing. So Julie, welcome, and nice to have you on the panel.
Thank you. I'm blushing, Aileen.
That's okay. And with Julie today is Chris Greenwood. I've known Chris for a long time. Chris is a senior insights manager with VisitScotland, who is our national tourism agency. Every single day, Chris is immersed in facts and figures about tourism, and whenever any of us want to know something about Scottish tourism, Chris is the person that we pick up the phone to. But it's not just the fact that he has this information at his fingertips. He's also helping us and helping the tourism industry every day digest that intelligence and think about our current and our future customers. So Chris, welcome to today's panel.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have got Scott Byrne. Scott, really lovely to have you here today. Scott is General Manager from a fabulous organisation, Hospitalfield, based up in Arbroath. And I think it's really exciting to have Scott here today, because Scott is working every day with artists and with some of the most exciting natural experiences that visitors can engage with around the east coast of Scotland. It's exciting also because Scott's organisation is going through an enormous programme of change and development, trying to open up what is a very valuable artistic resource to a much broader visitor audience. And I think within that that development, there will potentially be quite a lot of use for digital technology. So it's great to have someone on board today who's immersed in a process of actually art, technology, visitors, and that experience at the end of it. So Scott, welcome to the panel today.
Thanks very much for having me, and very pleased to be here. Sorry for inadvertently pinning myself to the beginning of your talk, James. I didn't mean to do that. It was really unnecessary, but I tried to figure it out. I tried to get myself off the screen as quickly as I could. But no, yeah, very happy to be here, so thanks.
Perfect. So we had a really good summary at the beginning of our session today from Anne, just in terms of the background, in terms of how the ideas were kicked off for the work. But I suppose just to say that very much underpinning everything we're thinking about for Scottish tourism is our tourism strategy for the next 10 years. And, you know, right at the very heart of that are places, people, businesses and communities. And, you know, that's what we all are consistently focusing on. And also thinking about the climate and environmental crisis that, that we're dealing with across the globe at the moment. So it's fabulous to get 4 really, really interesting takes on how technology could support the ambitions and the aims of Scotland. So I'd first of all just like to ask the 3 panelists, we were looking for our artists to visualize what tech-enabled tourism would look like for the next 10, 20 years. What are your thoughts on what you've seen?
I'm happy to kick off with that one, Aileen. I think the exciting thing for me in all of this is that you can see at the heart of this is sustainability, because if we're going to reimagine Scotland's visitor experience and become the destination that people want to come to, we must make sure it's sustainable. And for me, digital does that, because we're not cutting down lots of trees to print stuff, you know, you're actually giving people information that they need before they go to somewhere, so they're starting to understand what's expected of them. And I also think it really helps our teams deliver a better guest experience, because it stops them doing some admin things that are currently required. So I thought the artists, every single one of them, had something around about sustainability. And I was very excited to see that. And the second point I wanted to make was, you know, bringing Scotland forward, we can't just be about the cities, that sort of centralism where people come to Scotland and only experience Edinburgh or Glasgow or Inverness or Loch Ness or whatever it is. We want to spread them around our country, and to do that we can very much use digital. So I mean, hats off to the artists. I am totally not someone who could have done any of those, but I thought they really were all so different and yet all had amazing themes in them.
Thanks, Julie. Chris?
Yeah, so I mean, again, I think all the presentations that we saw were reflective of the skills and the experience of our artists. And you know, I was just in awe of the ability that was presented today. What I did find across all 4 were some consistent themes, that of connection and also time, which I think are central to the tourism experience. You know, the role of sort of nature and the urban experience, which of course sort of fulfills what Scotland is as a destination. We say the brand Scotland, you know, that inspiration that brings people here is landscape, heritage and culture, and the warmth of welcome. I think that was reflected throughout all as well. And, you know, we reflect that through our marketing as being, you know, dramatic, human and enduring. And again, I think we can all agree that the work that we saw reflects that. Digital is going to be the game changer from a consumer and a business perspective. And I think that going back to that sense of connection between people and connection sort of digitally is going to be the thing that progresses us to be the future destination that we want to be.
Thanks, Chris. And Scott, finally, your thoughts initially.
Yeah, I guess I was just focusing on my first impressions really, and connected them to the values that I would associate with tech-enabled tourism, the kind of soft values, these kind of low impact, intuitive, integrated and inclusive and diverse means by which we can enhance the visitor journey in Scotland. And anything that avoided, I think all of these were conceptually quite complex, and that's really important. It kind of avoided any cliche, it avoided any retrograde kind of simplistic kind of. I thought that was really to be admired as well. I think it was. I was preoccupied with the sense of place and trying to understand that in relation to how these artists approached it, and I'm always preoccupied with that. I think my accent is from Ireland and I live in Scotland, know Scotland very well, but I'm kind of slightly obsessed with this sense of place and how it's projected according to different filters. And I was really encouraged by that as well. I think that the artists all kind of managed to help us to understand what this future place that we're imagining might look like. We don't have a clear visual on it, but they were able to help us in that regard. I thought the sound was quite important, and I was visualizing the future, but the sound was used in 2 pieces, and it seemed to be inherently important to both pieces. It made Jonny's piece I really loved as well, and I think I was reminded of this Beta Band video that I couldn't get my mind out when I saw it, but I think music, maybe it was music, but it was, I think that's important to consider, the sound as well, and I'd certainly like to ask Elaine a little bit about that, the sound that she used for the sound behind me is my dog rustling in a bag, but so I was really enjoyed the last half an hour, so thanks very much.
Fantastic. So in terms of the artworks that you saw, which of the visions or which more than one of the visions do you think is most realistic and most likely to come to fruition? And are there any of the works and the ideas that you saw which you think are too far-fetched, which may just never get over the line?
Sorry to chuck my board in as well, but I could see Kat's working like straight away. I could see it. It really kind of spoke about the kind of the current projected image of Scotland as well. I think that there was a lot of synchronicity with what we currently project Scotland to look like. And I think that would be, and then Jonny's one. Conversely, I think that would be the kind of, not that it's unrealistic, but I think it's actually the most realistic vision, if you know what I mean, of the future. I think it was that was my opinion, but I could see a really clear application for cats straight away.
Julie or Chris, thoughts from you?
Yeah, sorry.
Chris.
Again, I think both Kat and James, I think had that sort of the vision of practicality of how technology will be embedded into the overall experience. That role of urban and rural, and how technology can be embedded within that, I thought was, gave to me the practical image of what we saw this to be. For Jonny and Elaine, I mean, obviously it was, for me, a much more emotional connection. For Jonny, it was very much in his explanation of how that balance of curated experience against, that unknown elements of magic, exactly what you said, Elaine, Aileen, is that trying to seek the unknown, the unique, the almost transformational, which brings me on to Elaine's, when the network sort of theme that was shown, I think was really sort of how I would define transformational. And transformational tourism to me is one of the key trends that's going to define tourism over the next 10 years. How visitors want to be emotionally driven by their travel, and I think technology is obviously going to enhance that. So as a metaphor, it was there, but again, it was the same with Jonny's, that representation, particularly the reference to markets as well, sort of chimed with me. So.
Yeah, I don't think any were too far-fetched. I'm a practical person, right? So sometimes I think I overlay practical on things like this, but when I think about Elaine's, I think about infrastructure and how we can go about building an infrastructure that can cope with the sort of experience that people want nowadays. And, you know, we've got an inverse problem for the next couple of years, because generally we had cities very full and then you know, the country getting fuller. Now we've got people not want to come to cities because of COVID and the problems that brings for the economy, with the fact that, you know, North Coast 500 was completely smashed out of the park last year, and how do we cope with that? So part of our job, I think, as an industry is to make sure that we play, and Aileen and Chris, I mean, you guys do an amazing job of this, but we must make sure that we play into the government's plans for infrastructure and the sort of experience that we want to deliver. Now, then you come into the digital infrastructure, and that's just a bit of a disaster zone, quite frankly, right now, because, you know, I mean, I'm obviously in the sort of accommodation sector, but we're still working with a lot of legacy technologies that are hard to integrate. If you do integrate, it's expensive, it's hard to upkeep. So that infrastructure is going to need work over the next few years, even just to deliver the sort of ideas seamlessly and cost effectively that James and Kat have. But to come to Jonny's piece, which you know, just blew me away. I mean, I loved being able to move around in it. There's something in the virtual representation of Scotland and where we can use that and monetize it so that we can be sustainable. Now, I don't claim to have any answers to that, but I'm very excited about the opportunity that brings.
I think I absolutely agree, and I think there's something in the virtual piece about making access easier for a much broader audience. I also think, though, that we need to figure out how we do this in a balanced way, because what we don't want to end up is that 90% of people's experience of Scotland is virtual, and actually what Scotland is all about is actually people being here and experiencing the hospitality and sticking their feet in the North Sea and turning blue because it's so fun, or having a dram with someone. So yeah, it's about how the technology enables and allows those experiences to become richer and become open to more people, but also to, you know, to do that piece about expanding everybody's experience. Yeah.
But there's still huge concern, Aileen, in the industry around about how digital and technology cannot replace that hospitality for which we are famous. And I think some of that is just about bringing our experience forward and understanding that just because maybe we don't want to experience them digitally doesn't mean that our visitors don't. And so what is it that our visitors want?
There's always the risk of homogenizing the visitor and the visitor experience.
Yeah.
And for many, I mean, the tourism industry in Scotland is typified by small, typically owner-operator type businesses, even to, you know, visitor attractions and activity providers and accommodation providers. And for them, digital rollout will be much more for the practical kind of productivity efficiencies that can come in. For the large corporates, we've got, like, you know, apps that will check us in, unlock our room, you know, book our meals. So the first person we engage with in a large corporate hotel could be the bar staff or the waiting staff. And that's possibly what people want in that situation. So I think it's that digital for the practical, but, you know, there's also the role of the digital for augmentation. And, you know, I think that is where we can enhance the overall experiences. So that dip in the North Sea, you know, we can overlay, you know, another experience on top of that, so that you get the haptic experience along with an augmented virtual experience as well. I think that's where product development and innovators, and this, certainly this project, will be able to inspire people to come up with that element of you know, the role of digital to make those unique experiences, so people go away and remember Scotland and share experiences with others, so that they can come and experience it as well. So
yeah. Scott, I just had a question. Given your business is so, you know, it's so rooted in its local area, and it's rooted in, you know, art and production of art, but you're really trying to catapult the business with investment into the 21st century. How does the digital piece feed into your thinking and what the future of Hospitalfield will look like?
I think they go hand in hand, that this experience and the digital. I mean, I think that's where Aileen, where Hospitalfield is a peculiar place in that you would think that it's rooted in its community, in its locality, but it's been hidden for so many years, where we're trying to raise it at a local level. In many ways, it's much better known internationally amongst a very niche network of artists, but it's peculiar that way. So, but that's what brought us to Traveltech in the first place, is this idea about the understanding the visitor experience and what that would mean, so that for our organization, so that we had questions that we were asking that we didn't have a ready answer for. So that's how we were met with Josh and the team to consider the stack of platforms that we would work with and that would benefit us. But I think even from there's ones that were very attractive. This Smartify app, you know, this kind of Shazam for pictures, that was very interesting. And also how you begin to think about interpretation within the walled garden. For example, the brief to the designer Nigel Dunnett is to talk about 800 years of horticulture in this space, and he can do that in a very subtle way through planting, etc., and a kind of recipe of planting mixes. But we want to tell the narrative, tell that story, and that's where technology can really help us. Because we don't want infrastructure of lots of signage and around the garden, but also we need to consider diversity within this conversation as well, I think, just in terms of our audiences, because we need to fold in what we've already got, a bit like what Julie was saying. We've got this, you know, reputation for hospitality, and we need to fold that into everything that we do and bring it with us, and not forget to you know, not throw it out with the bathwater kind of thing. We've got to make sure that that's warm, that warmth, and that sense of people and place is wrapped into what we deliver digitally. So that's what guided our decisions about where we, as well as practicality, we have to consider practicality, but what's appealed to us in making decisions about what's right for Hospitalfield is about what fits with that kind of ethos of the organization. And if it doesn't fit with the ethos of the organization, it doesn't mean that it's not a good thing, but it's just, it's not right for us to use. So it's really interesting to consider the range and scope and diversity of the market out there for these kind of products and this kind of platforms. But that's what's helpful for Traveltech for Scotland, is that it helps to make canny choices to go for the ones that are based in Scotland. Actually that platform's based in Edinburgh, so that's the one for me, rather than the one that's based in California. We'll leave that to the Californians. You know, it's kind of it makes sense. So it helped us to make our decisions better. Yeah.
It's good to recycle cash back into Scotland's economy, isn't it? Yeah. Josh, I'm conscious that there's probably quite a lot of questions flashing up from attendees. Would you like to maybe give us a flavour of some of those, please?
Yeah, but hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yes.
after my mess at the start. Sorry about that. I think there's a comment, but also potentially a question from Victor around the North Coast 500 and being fully electric as an aspiration, which I think is an interesting idea as well. And then the second sort of question from Frank Willoughby is, do the panel think that there is still a hesitancy within tourism to shake off the fear of embracing digital as the best way to both promote Scotland and then also some of the sort of the typical challenges around like lack of Wi-Fi and how do you stand out from the crowd and that sort of thing.
Julie, maybe as a supplier, can I pitch that one at you first of all, please?
I mean, I think I come across clearly right now it's just a basket case because everybody's struggling. There's no guests, so there's no money, and we'll put that to the side. What we've found over time as we've grown Criton is people have an idea of how much things will cost, and they want to stretch that budget as far as possible. And sometimes that's not possible with the technology they're using. If you use a legacy property management system and then your door keys are old, I'm not going to be able to magically make that work for you without investment. And that is definitely tricky. The main thing for me though is people need to do two things. They need to understand what it is their guests want, and they need to understand that that's probably changing because of what's happened over the past 15 months. And then they need to consider how they want to bring that into what is a digital guest experience and reimagine it, because there's a lot of process built into our visitor experience, which is around about capturing payment. And although we've tried to put first impression nonsense around about that, actually, if the first impression was, we know who you are, you can crack on and enjoy your trip, and we don't mind because everything is settled, that is a much better guest experience. I'm not just talking about hotels here, I'm talking about queues to pay when you've already paid online, queues to get into things, all that sort of thing, I think can be handled better if we reimagine the process, because we've handled the technology to get the money.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Chris, thoughts from you, because you're always looking at who our customers are now, who they're likely to be in the future. What's that insight telling you?
I just responded in the chats and said that we do have quite a diverse range of businesses within Scotland, and I think skills and skills are going to be a factor in being able to harness the role of digital. I think what we found over the last kind of 12 months during the pandemic is that for many businesses, their first foray into digital could be through social media and providing inspirational content for their customer base to remind them of what Scotland is. I think that is demonstrating the role that digital can play, that you can engage directly with your audience, you can send out your message, you can show your values, and obviously that's going to pay dividends in developing customer lifetime value. But from a consumer perspective, I mentioned that transformational tourism is going to be a key factor. People wanting to develop an emotional connection with a destination, and this is where communities come in, and those communities demonstrating that they want to preserve the natural and built environment, but not cocoon it in a kind of nostalgic vision of the past. So I think we need to have a progressive way forward. And I think Hospitalfield is a classic example of being able to marry a forward-looking vision, within a heritage setting, and that sort of chimes very well with the audience. I think over the short term, we need to remember that some markets might be unavailable to us. So, international markets may not return for up to 18 months. Hopefully, we'd like to invite, everybody to return sooner than that. But, we have to go with the situation we're in. So, you know, we're needing to try and think about how we can engage with domestic audiences, maybe hyper-local audiences, engaging with people within your own area as well. And of course, they're all going to have different wants and needs. And I think really the plus side of a digital strategy is, you know, the information that you're gathering and the analytics that you're gaining provides that insight, provide the product and adapt your products to what your changing audience would be able to want and need as well. So
excellent, thank you. I think, you know, both of you have touched on a point which it's a long-standing one, but it continues to be a challenge for many businesses and industry who are quite often small and don't have in-house technical capabilities and technical expertise. I think the invention of Traveltech for Scotland as a network, I hope, takes some of that worry and that panic away from the idea about investing in technology, because I think as we build the community in Scotland, not only do we have the trusted suppliers, but we've also got trusted intermediaries like Traveltech for Scotland who can help connect businesses and their needs with the providers. Josh, any other questions that you would like to ask the panel to think about?
There's no other questions coming through the chat at the moment, so I think it might be, you know, if anyone on the call would like to keep on throwing some in. So I haven't picked up any new ones at the moment.
Okay.
I'd be interested to hear from our artists if they have any questions for us. And would they like to hear our responses?
Maybe just a general question. Yeah, just you know, like going forward, is it a strategy? I think from this session here, you know, I guess like artists can sort of open up different areas of dialogue, and you know, is there a strategy going forward with the future of tourism in Scotland to keep that conversation going from here? You know, is there an opportunity to, because I think there seems to be so much crossover between creativity and experience and obviously like the science things with the environment and yeah, I just wonder if that's like a longer term strategy or if that's something that is in your minds that's a useful spark, you know, of ideas to come out of.
I don't know about you, Aileen, but certainly I'll be going back to my organisation with the experiences that I've had today, and going to decision makers. And I think this is something that would certainly help in people's visualization and understanding of how the national tourism strategy, which was launched almost, well, literally 12 months ago, can be visualized and seen into the future. And I think what we saw across all the works certainly personified and represented what we're trying to achieve. So, you know, certainly I'll be going back and sharing my experiences, and maybe something will come from that. I don't know what you think, Aileen, whether Sturg and the STA would be open to
yeah. I mean, it's really interesting for me because my job actually works across the creative sector and the tourism sector, and I spend most of my time thinking that the more we mingle creative thinking, creative people in with hospitality, tourism, and very, very much business-minded activities, the better the outcomes are going to be, because it's really just what you've done today. It's about really pushing us all out of our comfort zone, pushing the boundaries, and making us think about the huge breadth of opportunity, which is driven by the huge number of different kinds of customers that we are going to engage with through our work. So yeah, I mean, I absolutely support the the idea of much more creative thinking being brought in to help us all innovate. And yeah, I suppose my question back to the 4 artists, are the conversations you're hearing now, do they help you guys in any way?
Yeah. Oh,
sorry,
sorry.
Good, Johnny.
No, go on, Kat.
I think what's really interesting for artists when we're making work is that you pull from so many different resources. It's not like we're just looking at other artists as a source of inspiration. And I think for all of us, it's really interesting to hear from people in different industry sectors because it's so different from our day-to-day work. And so anytime that we approach a project, if one of you has brought up something that's quite interesting for us, then that kind of feeds into our work as well. So it's very interesting to hear about how you all have a different perspective on what tourism means and your own specialist area of that, because I think a lot of people, when you talk about tourism in Scotland, yeah, you do initially think of, oh, go to the castle, go to Edinburgh, go to Glasgow. But I really liked when one of you was talking about encouraging people to explore more of Scotland, the areas that people don't necessarily get to visit. And that really made me think about the various times that I've gone around exploring. Like my husband's family are really into hill walking, and one of them is she's done all of the Munros, or is it she's done all of the Munros and is now doing all of the Corbetts. And thinking about, oh, that could be an interesting link into tourism, and maybe there'll be a tech thing where you end up having apps that get you to do all of these different activities and get you to explore more of the areas outside of the city centres.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think there seems to be like a growing trend towards looking at finding off the beaten track areas and exploring, which is really good for kind of trying to take the pressure off high tourism areas too, such as the North Coast 500, which has been really successful routes, but they can be like really over pressurized at a certain time of the year. So it's really helpful to be able to look at using technology to be able to disperse people across different parts of Scotland. Oh, my voice is going here.
On a practical side of that, that sort of question, I was very interested, Julie, by what you were saying about. I think I felt like it touched on what I put into my artwork, which was the notion that you were saying that because a lot of the different digital systems that you're trying to integrate, some of them just don't have the infrastructure, or they're using sort of legacy technology. I think I often find as tourists these limits in like what an app will do, or like struggling to get onto Wi-Fi somewhere, or all these very daily frustrations that must come from much bigger sort of network sort of redundancies, or outdated technologies and stuff. In terms of using technology to access tourism, you would just the three of you were just talking about Scotland has a lot of these sort of small businesses and like locally run small tourist outlets, which are obviously absolutely fantastic. And I think in terms of a sort of sustainable future, having, say, small locally run hotels, small locally run restaurants that use local produce is obviously a really great grassroots route into sustainability. But often in terms of using technology to access tourist opportunities, obviously, as you say, like big corporations have the access to sort of IT departments, have the access to technology infrastructures that that like a small business doesn't necessarily do. I know you've mentioned this a bit more, but like, to what degree would it be like an active policy to encourage small businesses to use technology versus just sort of letting the market maybe dictate use of technology, which maybe gives bigger companies an upper hand?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's worse than that, because I think some of these technologies that chains have developed, like digital key checking online, will become an expectation, a hygiene factor, just like Wi-Fi has been. And if you don't provide them, you're going to be restricted in the guests that will come to you. So, I mean, one of the reasons I started Criton was because it's very hard as an independent to get the same sort of technology as the chains. But as a vendor, to provide something as affordable, and I put a note in the chat, you need volume, because volume implies that you're doing a lot, which means you can keep the price down. So it's tricky, but I also think there's a make it simple, so make it as simple as possible to onboard people. So if you said to, I'm going to generalize here and I don't want to upset someone, but if you said to a B&B owner, maybe who's been doing it for 40 years, I'm going to onboard you onto our system, they'll probably be like, what does that actually mean? Do I have to stand on a board? What? We talk a lot of jargon and technology that's unnecessary. What we mean is we're going to get you set up and get your product out there. And here's the benefits of the product to you and to your customers. So it's hugely challenging.
Yeah,
that's where the artist comes in, I think, though, and is where it's giving power and agency to the artist. And going back to what the artist already mentioned, I don't know, Kat, if an artist does in relation to whatever the tourism sector. I think there's that's what artists are so good at, is being able to look at something from a particular perspective. And I think whether it's placemaking or whether it's tech, travel tech, I think if there was one thing that came off the back of this is that artists had more power and agency in the decision-making process really early on, like at the first stage. I would say don't prepare the ground for the artist, just let the artist just get into the ground, you know what I mean? I think there's a lot of times there's too much of that happening. And I think if a bit like Elaine, your slime, that's how the best analogy I think for in terms of placemaking and artists, I think is that that kind of spreading of the seeking the opportunities and investing in the place you're at that time. Sorry, that's a bit broad ranging, but I mean to say that artists it's beneficial to everybody for artists to have more power and agency in these decisions.
Yeah. Thinking about decentralized systems, just talking about the slime, and do you think in the future there might be a move towards being able to empower local communities, smaller businesses more, where as opposed to say large online travel agents? Do you think in the future there'd be room to be like a more decentralized system which could work, which might have more direct relationships with customer to business rather than the in between? Or
I think it's actually a really good time and a good opportunity for Scotland as a nation to be thinking that way, because we're coming out of the pandemic. We have we have some direction about how Scotland as a country is looking to develop, and it is very much about thinking about communities and communities having more ownership and more stake in what happens. And that is then filtered through to Scotland's tourism strategy that Chris and I mentioned, and that's very much about communities being in charge rather than tourism happening to them. And all these things that you mentioned about big global systems, I think they will still have a place and they will still have a role, but I think now's the opportunity to actually think about building from the ground up, rather than things just happening to Scotland and to tourism in Scotland.
And can I say upskilling? Sorry, Chris, I'm sure you'll have something to say about this as well, but I was just typing it in the chat. There's, online travel agents have a huge part to play in bringing guests to the UK. As an independent, you're wasting your money trying to advertise all over the world. But what you need to make sure you do is that if that customer's coming back again, you don't pay commission. So a one-off commission is much more affordable than some of the other things you could do. And cost of acquisition as a concept, when people are trying to get people to come to their visitor attraction or their hotel or whatever it is still very hard for them to calculate. So the upskilling piece around about understanding that cost of acquisition will mean that you would still use your booking.com, your TripAdvisor, whatever, but you wouldn't use it for everyone who comes to you every time.
Exactly that. I mean, the evidence that we found, so we've been conducting consumer sentiment surveys of the domestic audience, UK audience, and what we found consistently from May through to now is that people do want to engage directly with the provider. They don't want to go through, OTAs and travel agents because they want to have that connection. They want to have that connection with the provider. And if you think within a hotel or a bed and breakfast, that's very easy to have that connection with, you know, somebody on reception or the owner themselves. For self-catering, there's sometimes a little bit of kind of distance between the owner and the client, but there's that, firstly, that sense of connection, and secondly, it's about being informed that if things change, what the rules are, you know, all that kind of thing. And we have to remember that we've got a new market that's coming in, domestic market, that would normally go abroad. They wouldn't even consider holidaying in the UK or in Scotland. And they might be wanting that kind of Ibiza experience or that Maldives experience, you know, in Skye or in Moray, you know. So, you know, how do we sort of like level up their experiences with what they want and what they're going to have? But I agree, for international markets, those OTAs are that kind of channel in to be able to, you know, book within your own language, use your own currency, have all the information, and also have somebody to go to for those questions and answers, and act as an intermediary. But once they're here, it's that connection between the provider and the customer, the visitor, that maintains that lifetime bond. So.
Mm-hmm. So I should have been keeping an eye on the clock, and I'm sorry, because the conversation was really interesting. I didn't want to stop us, but can I just say an enormous thank you, first of all, to our 4 artists for the huge amount of work that you've all obviously put in, and the thought that you have applied to the challenge in front of you. And then thank you also to Julie and to Scott and to Chris for being such a good panel. And Scott, sorry, you've got your hand up.
No, I was clapping.
Ah, good, okay.
Studying you and the artists and everything else.
Fab. So Josh, I will hand over to you for wrap up, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aileen, and thank you to everyone, to all of the artists, to all of the panel members, to yourself, Aileen, and a very, very big thank you to Anne as well, who has led this project, has been working with us for the last 8 months, has done a terrific job, and will be moving on in the next few weeks into other areas of work. So I just want to a big thank you to her, because she's led all of this. I think just I don't have any time to provide in my comments, so I might inflict a blog on people, but anyway, you don't have to read it. But I think the thing which I really enjoyed was that it really showed the purpose of what we were doing, which is that the creative work, the artistic work, should provoke and inspire both conversation, but hopefully action. And the thing I wanted to let everyone know is, first of all, you'll be able to access all the artwork, some of the artistic statements. Following this, we're going to be posting them on some on the internet, and so that everyone can see them, and that they'll have a life beyond just this moment. That we want to keep on using them, bringing them back, and engaging people in conversation around what the future of tech-enabled tourism in Scotland is going to be, and using these as a way to instigate those conversations, be it different routing using slime molds, or whether it is 360-degree experiences and all this sort of stuff. So I just wanted to thank everyone so much for what was a really, really terrific event. And now we're going to close off the meeting. And so please do stay in touch. Keep an eye out for the artworks that we're going to push out in the next week or so. And thank you very much for coming along.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
So much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, everyone.